Well, good afternoon, everybody. Please do take your seats again. It's great to hear those conversations with the kit manufacturers. And welcome back to Sky Expo, brought to you by BPS and NXTGENbps. And this is the final panel on the afternoon. It's on the craft of making content sustainably. And we're going to spend the next sort of 45 minutes or so discussing how the industry as a whole can accelerate sustainability in production. And we're going to focus on the real challenges, but also the practical solutions, rather than spend too much time on debating policies, although I'm sure there'll be one or two policies thrown in along the way it goes with the territory. And I'm delighted to be joined by 4 leaders and experts from across the industry who've got real practical hands-on experience, really to discuss that current transition from the old world into the new, who between them will share some practical ideas, recommendations, thoughts and advice for you to take away. Now, if you're tempted to leave halfway through, then I bet you won't be when I tell you the next thing, because right at the very end, we're going to give you a slide for you to take a photo of with all amazing resources and links to all sorts of organisations which we think will help you in your sustainability journey. So don't move, because otherwise you'll miss that one. You can see I've got 4 great panellists raring to go. I want to introduce you to them. Lesley Marr, who you heard earlier on talking about BPS, NXTGENbps, and has been behind this event today. She's Director of Business Development and Sustainability at NXTGENbps, and really leading the company's drive to deliver sustainable power solutions for film, TV and live events. You've got loads of experience in the industry, haven't you, Lesley? So bring that to life for us.
Well, actually, I was 15 years ago, I worked at Sky, and this was the Harrods building, I think. I remember...
a distribution warehouse.
It was, exactly right. So, yeah, I've been through my career and worked in operations right across the scale, from content prep to post-production. But I always like to sort of look at transformation and how businesses can change. And when I got introduced to NXTGENbps and we were looking at battery power, I was like, well, this is something new. This is really interesting, and our industry's got to change. So this is what I'm really happy to be involved in, and you know, why I'm here today, really, to help transform the industry once again from the days when I was back at Sky when we were just launching HD. So it's come a long way.
Yeah, it has, hasn't it? Good to have you here. And sitting alongside you is Davison, who's the Principal Consultant of What's Sustainability. And again, I know you're committed to helping organisations really unlocking that value and resilience by integrating sustainability. But when I've spoken to you, it's about doing it in an authentic way into their operations and supply chain, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. So, so I come from the industry. Film and TV have been in various roles for 20 years, and latterly in sustainability. So what I love doing is bridging, you know, the business case for sustainability into kind of the language that the business understands. And that's what I've tried to do all the time since consulting, is make it make sense for the business without just being the right thing to do and just being the green thing to do. Actually, it makes commercial sense often too. So, so that's, yeah, that kind of bridge between the business sense and the sustainability purpose is what I really like to work on. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming here today. And sitting alongside you is Mandy, Cayford, who's the Sustainability Advisor for Picture Zero. And they're one of the UK's leading sustainable production consultancies for the creative industries. Long career in broadcast television, wearing it very well, though. And again, if people haven't met you before, Mandy...
I think most people, actually, quite...
Who knows Mandy in the room? There we go.
Have. Who doesn't know me is probably...
Have you brought your fan club? This side of the room don't. So there you go, Mandy. Yeah. This is your audience now as well. So I spent quite a few years working at Sky, and was very lucky in my last role to work with the Sky Responsible Business team, who a couple of people are here today, when I was with Sky Studios, and helped create the strategy for production sustainability, along with the Sustainable Production Guidelines, sat on the BAFTA Albert Consortium, and I'm now very lucky to be one of the sustainability advisors for Picture Zero, who were working for Sky when we were doing the production sustainability consultants project, pilot consultants project, to try and prove the value of having expert support to deliver
on production sustainability to help productions decarbonise at speed.
Well, thank you for coming along, Mandy, and glad you've brought your fan club with you. Crispin, have you brought your fan club with you?
One of them.
One of them, okay. And growing. Founder of Location One. Oh, he's got two now. I'm sure that number will grow further. And I know you spent the first 7 years of your career in the film industry working in the locations department, and then took the move to set up Location One in 2008. So what do you actually do?
So I was a location manager. I used to find locations for shoots around London, and when my wife and I decided to have a family, Carly was working in sustainability in the city at the time, and I was running around like a location manager nutter, and we felt that we just needed a bit more stability in our lives. So I thought, brilliant, I'll start a business supporting other location managers with logistical equipment. So when they're filming on location, crews will obviously need water, power, light, and we will supply that infrastructure. And we brought Carly's sort of sustainability knowledge to the business, and that we've driven sustainability really through the veins of our business since we started it.
So that's your panel, fantastic expertise amongst you. And let's start by setting the scene. Let's start by thinking about the current state of play without spending too much time on it, because we want to make it quite practical. But let's find out what we're dealing with. And I get a sense that currently there's a considerable amount of frustration when it comes to this in the industry for all sorts of reasons, when it comes to the craft of making content sustainably. And we seem to be in that hybrid phase, Lesley, don't we? One foot in the old, one in the new. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment. You've got your really willing change agents who are really up for trying something new, prototyping things, looking at using new tech. And then you've got your old school, it works, so why change it type of people, you know, still running big productions and just wanting to play safe and play in their comfort zone. So we're in a transition. I mean, you know, we're in the business of selling power solutions and getting batteries and getting people to change and move away from using diesel or transition fuels. And it's been tough, actually. But we have really seen, probably in the last 6 to 8 months, you know, people actually trying these new pieces of kit, and actually it's working, and being amazed at not just the fact that, you know, they offer, you know, silent operation, which is a whole new workflow for people that used to have generators right next to production. They can, you know, they had to be miles away with loads of cable runs. Now they can have them, you know, right on set, close to the action. So we're seeing that change. We've still got a long way to go, but we're definitely seeing some change happening, which is exciting.
And Crispin, uncertainty seems to be at the forefront of people's frustrations. And many production companies, when you think about it, operate in the short term, which is not good news when it comes to sustainability, making it hard to secure those long-term investments. And I'd imagine the current economic climate has exacerbated that challenge as well. But is uncertainty the name of the game, which is the key frustration?
Yeah, I mean, for a business owner, you crave certainty and knowledge of your pipeline going forwards, and the film industry is not really, certainly in scripted, is not set up well for that. So the more certainty and agreements we can have put in place with production crews, the better for us. For sure, yeah, and then we can actually look to really invest properly in the future, because at the moment, you know, we're from one week to another, we often don't know exactly what we're doing. There was actually a company that we cross-hire 20k hybrid generators off with a battery embedded within the unit. They become really popular. They sit outside of our industry, and we were up to about 6 months ago renting them off them as a subcontractor quite regularly, but I spoke to them last month, and actually they are only now going to be supporting the construction industry, who give them 12-month contracts. We can't do that because we don't have that sort of certainty. So, yeah, the certainty helps us a lot as a business.
Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? You can see why they'd want to offer the service to the construction industry, because it's guaranteed work, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then Des, from your point of view, Dee, fragmented practices and lack of standardisation across broadcasters and suppliers has limited progress, hasn't it? And I don't know if you agree with that, but one of the things, the Climate Content Pledge, which was signed by 12 broadcasters and streamers at COP26, that was back in 2021. And those 12 included the likes of the BBC, Channel 4 Sky and ITV, and those 12 represented 70% of viewing time. And they committed to using their content to help audiences understand what tackling climate change might mean for them, as well as inspire and inform sustainable choices. And then fast forward to COP29 last year, UK's biggest broadcasters committed to a shared measurement system for climate change content. So those sort of pledges, are they making an impact?
I don't know for sure. I have no data to back up my kind of feeling, but I would say standards across the board are absolutely necessary to a point, right? We don't want to be overrun with standards and policy and just kind of bureaucracy that just takes time off doing the job and making changes that we so very need. But yeah, I think those cross-industry collaborations have to push us forward, and they are necessary. And all the work that Albert's doing, there are other industry bodies like the Responsible Media Forum and the DPP and others, setting standards. What they do is they give people a framework to work within, which, particularly for the SMEs in our industry, of which there are many, sometimes that's really, that's what they need to kind of start their journey. For the bigger organisations like Sky, they have whole teams of people that are well-resourced, that have experience. They pay for consultants to come in. They have the resources. But the sort of long tail of SMEs in our industry need frameworks, need guidelines from the big companies in order to sort of know, what the goals are and what we're all aiming towards and what's important, I think. So not to say that SMEs don't know what they're doing, of course they do. And there's some great examples, Location One being one, of companies who are really being progressive and really pushing boundaries. But I think I'm talking kind of much further down the line, the sort of, 5 to 10 people in a company that want to do the right thing but don't quite know how. So I think standards are important. I think as important or possibly more important is the will and the ambition of the people working, in productions to make it happen in the senior echelons of the team. In junior levels or in freelance levels, people don't want to take the risk, as Lesley said. They want to play it safe. So it's harder to put your hand up and suggest things, particularly in a freelance capacity. If you don't know if it's going to be successful or not. So why would you potentially go and make that change if it's not your production or you're sort of tied into the leadership of it. So I think you need both. You need people on the ground with action as well as ambition, and you need the standards and the frameworks to give everyone the kind of guidelines to work within.
And Mandy, when you look across the whole supply chain, it's all critical, isn't it, to furthering the sustainability cause, whether it's the commissioning phase, the planning phase, contracts, culture on set, which we'll tap into in a minute, suppliers, the actual production process as well, and then obviously post-production, transmission and distribution, but it's all critical. But who's really driving that scrutiny to go faster with changes?
Well, I mean, I can only really talk from my own personal experience working at Picture Zero, and I think what's interesting, even just in that list that you've just given, is the potential for the power of a community to actually come together, to actually drive the change. And I think, talking about, people feeling like they're in isolation, if you look at the makeup of a production in every department, it's everybody's responsibility to actually drive this change, not just down to one person. I think what we're seeing is certainly the way that we work is our work kind of falls into three categories. So data, which is of course super important to capture accurate data, to understand, and measure, the impact that the productions are having. But the second part of that is the actions, and you can't actually have the data without implementing the actions in the first place. So we're talking about how do we decarbonise, how do we implement new tech, how do we, reduce our impact as a whole. But that also then informs, it leads on to the cultural piece. So actually changing that culture and making everybody become change makers and not resistant. But you have to be able to meet people where they are to actually understand their challenges and why either they're nervous about doing something, why they're resistant to doing it in the first place. You change the culture, which will lead to the actions, which will then lead to the better data. And that is, incredibly powerful piece of work. So we're noticing a huge difference and a huge change in what I would say is the commitment. I wouldn't say engagement. We talk about engagement a lot. You guys are all sitting in the room here. You're all engaged, I hope, in what we're talking about. But the difference between being engaged and actually committing to doing these things is quite different. So that's what we're seeing a lot with the work that we're doing, is actually working with each department, being also seen as a sort of valid department on its own as a sustainability, but embedded within the production, and that informing all of those three pillars to actually progress this work.
So it sounds as though in the planning, if it's planned well, it doesn't need to cost more.
Do you know what? It's a perception that sustainability must cost more. But again, what we can do is actually to recognise that, in fact, if you're running, say, a large battery instead of a generator, or you're hybridising a battery with a generator, so maybe it's powering something for 75% of the day, and then the generator's kicking in to recharge that battery. Of course, you're then reducing your fuel by the same amount, and therefore the costs are going down. It doesn't always cost more. So I think that is a slight misconcept.
Well, let's think about then, just picking up on some of the points, how we can accelerate and mobilise the industry from a sustainability perspective when it comes to making content. And we've mentioned culture. So let's start by looking at culture change on set and industry leadership. So who's calling the shots? Can the talent do more to influence this? So let's think of some tangible outcomes for our audience as well. So, Dee, if I can come to you first of all.
I mean, as I said before, I think that our industry is unique in so many ways in terms of the working patterns of the people on set, the timescales and everything. So I've got an example of a client I'm working with, major broadcaster, trying to look at freelancer travel. It's really hard to make a change for freelancer travel because, one, as was said on the last panel, venues sometimes aren't, this is a sports broadcaster, so venues aren't always set up for electric charging. So they can encourage freelancers to drive electric if they can afford it, but they don't know, if I'm a freelancer going to an event that finishes late at night, do I want to get in an EV that's lost half its charge because I haven't been able to charge at a venue and then have to stop on my way home later, So I think there's, I think the freelance community is a big opportunity in terms of reducing footprint from a travel perspective, from a behavioural perspective, but it has to come from the people who are leading the productions. It has to, and I've seen there's really great examples of success where you do have a head of production, who is genuinely bought into sustainability, and will therefore empower the team and give permission for people to take measured risks, so that they're not, like with batteries and hybrid solutions and stuff. I mean, I haven't got the on-the-ground experience that Mandy and Crispin have got, but, I've heard of plenty of examples and seen this kind of inspirational leaders really kind of making big changes. But without that, it can be really hard. You need to have the business case to do something from a kind of more of a corporate perspective. One of my clients is working with with a rights holder who's saying to them, look, how can we reduce freight? Come on, tell me. And they're like, great, thank you for asking, because without your question to me, like, how am I going to take it to my seniors and go, well, by the way, can we do more sea freight over air freight? They go, no, because all this kit's booked out. But the client's asking for it. Okay, let's sit around the table and have a conversation. So, it does, like, the client has so much influence still. So that relationship's really important. So I would say the customer/client is key, and the head leadership, is also key. And on that example, they did reduce their freight. They reduced it by reducing the weight of what they were shipping to smaller pods of kit, fly packs, I think they're called, yeah. And then they also reduced it by rescheduling, so they put loads more on sea freight. Air freight, 60% more emissive than sea freight, and they made huge savings from a carbon perspective, and they made tens of thousands of pounds saving from a budget perspective. So then the people in the broadcaster were like, well, this looks good, let's explore this with other customers. So, you know, I think it takes client requesting new innovation from suppliers in a supportive way, and also, yeah, the permission and the ambition from the top filtering down to the freelancers and all those people to try and encourage behavioural change.
And Mandy, from your perspective?
Yeah, I think, you know, you referenced supply chain before, and I think, you know, talking about that community, the power of building strong relationships with different suppliers, to also work with the productions, and certainly, you know, Crispin and, you know, Lesley and Jono. We've got Julie from Garden Studios here. You know, the way I see the work that we're doing is a true collaboration, and that goes right through to all of our suppliers. And honestly, you know, some of the things that I've achieved this year would not have been possible without the support and the input from those suppliers. And, you know, I'll give you a couple of specific examples. I think this is really, really interesting. You know, I worked on The Capture, which is UIS BBC drama at the beginning of the year. And we had a unit team who are a little bit nervous about working with battery technology. They hadn't done it as much before as some of the other productions. So Jono actually brought a van full of batteries down to Garden Studios, and we set up shop outside of the production office, and he demonstrated how the batteries worked to the unit team, to the locations team, to whoever else was interested to come along and look at the technology. And then went one step further, which was to leave us with a couple of the batteries for the unit team to play with over a week or so, just to get confidence and be on hand to answer questions. Now, you know, as a consequence, the production then hired several of the batteries, and we've done the same on other productions this year. Now, that is the difference, and that's that powerful community relationship. You know, Crispin and I have worked together with, you know, eco-pods, and, you know, and if I've got a problem, you know, I will often immediately phone Crispin, get his thoughts. Is there anything Location One can do? Because I know that we can work together to actually solve these problems. And that is how we fast track this stuff.
So we need to clone Jono.
We need to clone, you know, and you know, and also, you know, working with, as I said, Julie, who's the head of sustainability at Garden Studios, working with the Sky Studios, Elstree operations team. The same thing. I include them in my weekly green working group meetings. You know, they come along each week. They learn what they also need to be thinking about to advance, you know, their sustainability offerings. And, you know, it's powerful. It really is.
So it's that hesitancy, isn't it? Or people not knowing, but actually giving them that education and guidance.
Yeah.
Gives people the confidence. Crispin?
I think as well, to that point, you know, the stuff that the kit that we're dealing with, some of it is quite experimental. You know, hybridising batteries is quite technical and relatively difficult when you're dealing with people who aren't used to working with power that much. And so those heads of production, having an understanding that, like, this is a collaboration, we're in it together and things might go wrong is really, really powerful. I was on a job with, it was 60/40 Films, Carl Legis' job, and he's a great proponent of sustainability, and we had quite an old school unit manager who was like, oh, you know, if I get this power wrong, you know, you're going to give me the sack. You know, I can't have things go wrong. And he said, well, no, I'll give you the sack if you don't try and experiment with the power. So it's those leading characters giving people the permission to explore and experiment and try something new, I think is really important.
Is the talent as well. I'd love to see, you know, some of the talent that you know, very high profile influence people to be able to say, I'm not actually working on this production unless it's greener. I mean, that's really powerful. So, you know, I'd love to get to a point where, you know, we're not only getting the contracts, but we're getting the sort of lead talent asking the questions.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had to do a show in Switzerland, which I won't name, but the producer said I had to go by train.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, okay, fine. But actually, I probably would have got the plane and I thought, well, no, that's a good idea. I can work on my way there. Yes, it will take longer, but actually it's starting to come through into contracts as
It's
well.
difficult for us to
Add on
influence.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just talking about that exact power of having cast involved, some of you may be aware of the Green Rider Initiative, and we were lucky. So the Green Rider Initiative, if you're not sure, is a community of actors who've got together to create a guidelines for talent and actors to ask for and work with the production. So it's not a series of demands, it's a sort of like a handshake document that they can create. If you know, I'd like to have this, you know, I'd like to share my vehicles, they don't need exclusive transport in exchange for the production, reducing their, you know, fossil fuel power, etc., etc. And we had Holiday Granger lead cast on the capture, who came to the production with a green handshake, which immediately set the tone. I mean, we had the most incredible producer who was so supportive all the way through the production in the first place. But having this, her leaning into supporting the sustainability on the production immediately said to everybody on the crew and the rest of the cast that the production were taking this seriously. And it also led to one of the cast actually phoning the night before he was due to be picked up to go to one of the locations, saying, do you know what, can you cancel my car, I'm going to get the train. Specifically for the sustainability aspect, because he had taken notice when I'd done the briefing and talked, you know, Holiday and I talked about, you know, what we were going to be doing. And that, you know, that ripple effect, you know, is so important.
So maybe for people in the audience to think about, actually ask those questions, actually, rather than saying how you're going to travel there, present the option saying we'd rather you go this way than that way,
but
if it's possible.
I think what's also interesting is that until the last couple of years, cast are always seen to be, or, you know, talent are seen to be the people you cannot talk to. You know, never, you know, don't kind of rock the boat. They are, you know, they have their contracts, they have their, you know, exclusive transport, their star trailers, etc. But what you find is when you are empowered to speak to that, again, community, and they are, you know, I see them as another department on a production, and they are just people, that actually they are very much interested in being involved in the conversation and want to be seen to be lending support and leading as well.
How about when it comes to technology and resource considerations? You know, we've already identified that investment is a little bit hampered already, possibly by cost, availability, and fragmented demand signals from the industry. So what can we do about that? Because we've recognised it as a challenge, but we want to empower people to, what can we do about that to make it better? Is it about laying out the business case as to, we won't be able to get the best resources because of the short-termism, or because you're not prepared to put that investment in? What can we do about that? Crispin?
Oof, don't know.
I know you're rubbing your
I wish I
head
had the answer to that.
Yeah. Who's got the answer to that?
I would say it's nothing's perfect. It's not perfect. And sometimes it might work and sometimes it might not. I think, you know, enabling people to try in the first place might actually find that, you know, they actually really push through to adopt some of, you know, certainly some of the technology. But, you know, as I said, I think, you know, the financial aspect often is seen as a barrier. I think there are a number of broadcasters who actually recognise that and actually build a framework that includes some kind of financial support while the industry is in, I guess, what I'm going to call a transition phase, to get people to be working in this way so that it becomes more business as usual. And so things like, you know, using HVO fuel, which was seen as a sort of like, you know, it was a really new technology a few years ago, is now an accepted way of working. And now it's like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? So it's, you know, it's a case of giving people confidence to actually know they can try this stuff. And, you know, and yes, potentially the some financial support to do it, but it's not always just about the finances.
I think, there's a sense of momentum, and I think, you know, the EcoPod, which is a product we brought out a few years ago now, which essentially allows crews to recycle better on location. a few of our customers, a few of our competitors have come up with their own ones, and there's this move. And then I think now, it'd be quite unusual to go to a production now, a scripted show, and for them not to have some type of recycling service. When we first started doing recycling in 2010, I think it was, people in the industry were like, well, you can't do that in the film industry. You can't recycle in the film. No way, it won't happen. But now I think it's the norm and the expected. And I think probably it is actually can be like crew saying, well, what are we doing about the recycling? Where's the eco-pod, or why have you got those diesel generators? Have you not got any batteries? And I think the more that people talk about it, the more panels like this we have, the expectations rise, I guess. Yeah. And then obviously, Netflix are good at it. Amazon, the big streamers, the more we can get them on board. And
but who's made them good at it? Is it the consumers demanding it?
Yeah, I guess it's...
Where's the demand coming from, Dee?
Well, I think the big companies have a lot of pressure, regulatory pressure, investor pressure, consumer pressure if they are consumer facing. So, the bigger the company, the more they have to answer for what they're doing. So, so it doesn't surprise me in a way that some of those bit larger companies are doing more. And that's great because then, through industry forums, you were mentioning standards earlier, but through industry collaborative forums like the Albert steering groups and stuff, that's where these larger companies come together and start to share some of that experience and best practice, and then that can be aggregated and sent out to the wider industry for everyone else to learn. So I think, I'm completely on board with what Mandy and Crispin are saying. It's got to be sort of, it's got to be kind of industry wide, and also we just got to, for the technology stuff, I want to be part of a business who's pushing ahead on this stuff. Like Location One with their EcoPod, you're the first ones there with this amazing solution for waste separation, and that probably feels great. And actually, you can kind of talk a lot about that, and be really progressive with that. And I was talking to someone the other day about Trump and what's going on in America, and I won't go down that rabbit hole. But
no, please don't.
But we were joking because you often get in sustainability. You sometimes get people going, well, what's the issue with the UK? Do we need to worry if you're in China? That's who you need to be worrying. It's like China are doing really well, and we were likening it to Trump's going to be still working on a Betamax while China's on Laserdisc. It's like, you don't want to be that person who's so far behind. You want to be progressive. So I think that the challenge with economics is so prevalent, but, the bigger, larger companies need to be seeing this in a different way. And I think Sky is looking at it in this way. They need to look at it as, it's operational resilience for the future. It's being more competitive in the marketplace. It's kind of pushing ahead with green solutions that will eventually, hopefully, cut cost and carbon. So there's loads of positives. Yes, there's upfront investment, but actually if you look down the line 5 or 10 years, those are the companies that are going to be doing well and thriving because they are shifting to a low carbon economy that will come, undoubtedly will come. So, yeah.
And Lesley, we mentioned earlier in the previous panel that head of production role sets the tone. And that doesn't matter what industry you're in or part of the broadcasting world. And I think that's so important, whether it's sports, whether it's drama, whatever it is. It's setting the tone because then the rest follows. And you heard about putting sustainability into those procurement contracts. So right at the very start of everything.
I think it's really important. And I mean, for us, selling our products, batteries, to a hire company like Crispin, for example, it's hard for Crispin to commit to purchasing new tech when he's got no certainty about the actual the people that are going to use the product committing to it for long enough ahead for that cycle. And of course, that's a big frustration for us because all of the hire companies, they have a lot of current pieces of kit, mostly diesel generators that they're still trying to run the legs off because, of course, they're monetizing their product. So until somebody else says, no, actually, we're not doing that at all. And that will have to come from the leadership, the contract at the beginning, until somebody really puts their foot down. It will be very hard to change because it's a long supply chain with a lot of planning up front. There's fast turnaround stuff, and I think smaller companies are able to be more agile. Smaller companies don't necessarily, as you were saying, have the legislation or the commitment that they've made, but actually they're able to turn things around quicker because, you know, they're able to sort of move on their feet and just give things a try. Whereas for a bigger organisation, that's got more of a corporate structure and more of a lead time on things. It's harder to achieve, but it's still possible, definitely. It's just, you know, it's just actually making that happen and giving the certainty. And other industries can do it. Yeah. You know, what frustrates me is that we're really far behind, and that's a real shame for an industry who's actually, you know, what we're doing every day is we're making amazing content, we're getting it onto tablets and all these, you know, different camera angles and all the things we've talked about today, yet with something like sustainability, we're years behind, really.
When you think about digital transformation, the media industry was at the forefront of it.
Yeah.
Talking about other industries, surely we can look to other industries for best practice, can't we? Dee, I don't know if you've got any examples of working with other industries that you can share with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I make it, you know, really sort of work hard to sort of make time in my diary to go and interact with other sectors. And the company I've just joined, What Sustainability, works across sectors. And there are lots of commonalities. You know, there's these things called COPs, not the Conference of the Parties, but the communities of practice of sustainability professionals that come together from different sectors to share what they're doing. And actually there are, surprisingly, I've sat around a table with like the NHS and with pharma companies and with car manufacturers and with you know, universities. And a lot of the problems, particularly with Scope 3 and the challenges, are similar. And it's really useful to go and listen to what other sectors are doing. You know, someone in a car manufacturing company gave a presentation to us at one of these communities, and the very next day I went and changed something with a client that we were doing on risk based on what I'd learnt that day. You know, and it's really important that we don't just, you know, speak and act in an echo chamber, that we are going further afield. And some of these communities are free or pretty inexpensive to join as well. So yeah, there's lots that we can learn.
And just on that point, the Scope 3, I mean, it's the focus groups, is it? Is that what you're alluding to? Or not?
Yeah, so there's a couple of communities of practice that I'm part of. One's called Future Planet, which is very good. That's general sustainability. There's another one I'm part of, which is part of Sodexo, and there's a few examples I can share if you want on you know, things I've learnt there. But the Scope 3 particularly is something called the Scope 3 Peer Group, and that brings together over 2,200 companies, I think they've got now. And they are people from global companies, different sizes, but based all around the world, who are charged with managing a responsible supply chain. So they come together for conferences, they prepare resources, they have workshops on particular areas of challenge. They have a benchmarking tool, which is free to use, it's online, so you can go in and put what you're doing with your supply chain and see how you're doing compared to other industries. Tons of resources, mostly free. You know, and it's really helpful to learn from these things because, you know, we need to work as quickly as we can. So, you know, why would we go and reinvent the wheel and just not go and find out what's going on out there?
And without doing a whole essay on it, just in case people don't understand what Scope 3 is pointing towards, what does Scope 3 mean and why does it matter to this audience?
So Scope 3 is the scopes are the ways of categorising emissions. Scope 3 is supply chain emissions. So everything you buy, sell, do, from business travel to CapEx to commuting, all your purchased goods and services all have emission factors. All of those aggregate up to your Scope 3 emissions. Why it's important is because typically it's 80 to 90% of the footprint, of a carbon footprint of a company, and also the hardest thing to tackle because it's what you don't have control of, direct control of. So it's about working with your supply chain in a prioritised way, so looking at where you spend the most money or where the biggest hotspots of emissions are, and start like working based on materiality of your Scope 3 to try and tackle those areas first.
And a lot of it's about education, but how about mentoring schemes, Mandy, from maybe other industries, which Dee's spoken about as well, for supporting smaller suppliers or just mentoring schemes in general? Is that something that's furthered the cause for you and when you've been speaking to people in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, not so much. I mean, there are schemes available for companies to go to. That obviously there's a lot of training available in the industry. I mean, Albert do quite a robust series of different training schemes. There's screen skills as well, where there is like a basic awareness of sustainable production practices. And even companies like DPP, which Dee was mentioning, often have some kind of overview that companies can go to actually understand where they should be heading. Yeah, I'm not as aware of the kind of mentoring schemes for other companies.
And when it comes to Albert, is there a case to be said that compliance is seen as like a tick box exercise rather than a skill building opportunity? So what's going wrong there? How can we fix that?
It's an interesting one. I mean, look, BAFTA Albert, the toolkit, the certification is absolutely the way forward. It is the one place that productions can rely on actually being able to certify their productions correctly with inputting the carbon footprint. But the data is only as good as what goes into the tool in the first place. So I think the thing that needs to get better is it isn't just reliant on, let's say, a coordinator level person tasked with it on the production on top of their other role to input whatever data they have to hand. So, so actually professionalizing the capturing of the data in the first place to make sure that it is actually worth capturing. Otherwise, if you are just ticking the box to say just put whatever in, it doesn't really matter as long as we get certified. That's the issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Dee, something that you mentioned to me on a phone call was about rotational sustainability roles within divisions, and I think it was the BBC that you cited, that they do a 6-month rotation of senior staff. And, that helps, get that message across, doesn't it? So that collaborative approach. So just tell people in the audience a little bit about that and again, what impact that's had.
Yeah, I mean, I only know about this because I had a meeting a few years ago with I think it was the head of technology. It's definitely in the technology division. BBC don't do this in every division, but in the technology division, I know what they do is they have a senior leader who's on secondment for, I think it's up to a year. I don't know if all the exact details, but it's more than 6 months. And they go into the sustainability lead for the division. So they come out of their role for up to a year and then sit in the sustainability lead and get familiar with all the issues, all the challenges, understand all the terminology, meet all the relevant stakeholders. And so they kind of have like a crash course for a year and they really live and breathe it and stand in the shoes of the sustainability person. Then they go back to their job and hand it over to someone else in the senior role. So it's a really nice way of, sort of diffusing sustainability into the company across the senior leadership, who then really, get on board and understand, the role of the sustainability people that sometimes can feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall. But, really helpful. And just quickly on the mentoring one, because I have been party to one of these mentoring schemes outside of our industry, but it was a Sodexo scheme. And Sodexo, big, catering company, their SME supply chain, they're dealing with their larger suppliers by having contractual obligations around decarbonisation, but they recognise that their SMEs are not quite there yet, and some of them need support. So they put a sort of call out for SMEs to put their hand up and say, look, we don't know where to start, we haven't measured a footprint, this is the stage we're at, collected all that information in, and then paired them with willing larger suppliers or people who are further down, down the journey, maybe had SBTI decarbonisation targets set, and then they paired them for 6 months, and it was an hour a month. That was the only commitment that the larger supplier had with the SME to try and support, guide, advise, signpost, because you go online and you can get lost in a world of white papers and webinars and everything, and actually if you have someone who's been through it in a similar sector, it can be really helpful. And I thought this really simple, cost-effective, completely free mentoring scheme would, over a period of time, would really help to address some of that long tail that's quite difficult to get at otherwise.
Yeah. And Crispin, how can that translate into what you're doing at Location One? Those unit managers benefiting from that hands-on guidance and mentoring to try new technologies, as we've heard Jono has done. I mean, maybe you want to hire Jono.
Yeah. Well, Jono's pretty much part of the team, to be honest, at our place.
They'd have a ball if you didn't hear that, yeah.
I mean, within our business, it's a big part of our value structure, and at interview stage, we always talk about sustainability and the fact that that's important to us. So, and in a small business, I guess you're always sort of mentoring someone. There's mentoring going on everywhere. It's harder to mentor our customers in the same way, but we try, similar to what Jono did with Mandy's production. We always try and make the kit accessible to people, and if they're not used to it, we'll give them trials and help them, and we'll always be on the end of the phone. And we talked about data a bit. It's something we feel is like really, really important. Data drives all of this stuff, so we try and make sure that's available to people throughout the production, because I think with the Albert certification, I think in the past what's happened is the end of the production, someone's gone, oh shit, we've not done the Albert stuff, stick it in the computer, and it's sort of useless at that stage. You want to be doing it throughout the production. So with our EcoPod reports, for example, every time a trailer EcoPod is emptied, production will get a report, and then they can use that as an ongoing measure of how they're doing with their recycling. And that has an impact on production, rather than someone at the end going, oh, I forgot to do it, stick it in. And I think that's where, in our industry, the sustainability consultants who really, I mean, when I started the business, there were, you guys weren't around. I know you were embedded in Mandy. We're not sure if you were at Sky then, and you were embedded in larger productions, but the freelance consultant is quite a new phenomenon, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's a really good point actually you're making about like the EcoPod reports, because it means that we can adjust things throughout the production.
Yeah.
So if we see that maybe the composting rate is really low when we know actually it should have been higher, but then we can look to say, actually, do you know what, there was food contamination going in with the compostables, and that meant that not as much could be composted. At least we can then implement things throughout that production filming stage to actually adjust that, so that when we can then analyse the next report and say, hey, actually that thing worked, we did a slightly different bin sorting thing, or we put a notice up to say, don't put your food in here, the food goes in here and the compostable boxes go in there.
Yeah.
That actually worked, and that changed the dial a bit more, and then you learn throughout that process.
And is that live monitoring that you're doing of the EcoPod?
Absolutely.
So just in case people doesn't know what an EcoPod is.
Sorry, it's pretty basic. It's a big trailer basically split up into 3 sections. The first section has got a ramp that comes down, and there's 240-litre food bins in there. So this gets transported to wherever their production might be filming. The caterers can take the food bins out and put all of their food into the food bins. Their potato peelings, their fat, their oils, what have you. The middle section is for recycling, dry mixed recycling. The rear section is for general waste. And also in the first section, you can also put your compostable eatware, so your vegware, for example. That then, when they filled that trailer up, it comes back to us at location 1, and we basically disseminate those different streams into sections, and that is then collected from us. So the composting, the eatware goes to an in-vessel composting plant. When you eat out of vegware, it doesn't automatically get composted, because if you chuck it into a general waste bin, essentially it gets burnt. So it's sort of it's better than using other products, but you really want to compost it. So we send those streams off to the respective recycling plants, and then we give production a report, which breaks down exactly how much of each stream we've sent to each place. The clever thing, we think, is that in the EcoPod we've made the walls that essentially separate the compartments movable and removable. So, and actually on some productions, the rear section, the general waste section, is now becoming smaller. So the recycling section in the middle is becoming bigger, and ultimately what we want is that there's no general waste in the back.
Got it. No, thank you. That's described it beautifully. And I know, Mandy, you've brought along an example, and this is from Jurassic World Rebirth. I don't know if you've seen the film. It was out a few months ago. I got to see it. I really enjoyed it, actually. But just tell us a little bit about what we're about to see, and then we'll play the video.
So working with NBCU, who have an amazing framework of standards that we work towards for sustainability, which are embedded right through from script all the way through to screen. So we're working with each team to look at the power, to look at the fuel, to look at the travel, the transport, the energy, things like materials, every kind of category that would inform the makeup of the production. And we had, incredible support. I mean, it was an incredibly complex feature to work on because it was filming in Thailand and in Malta and in UK. In UK, we were at Sky Studios Elstree, so we were off to a winner already being up there for the UK locations. We had one of the largest teams of sustainability as a team of any feature to date for NBCU. This little film is a result of what we did.
Yeah, so James, I don't know if you can spot it in the slide deck. Let's play it. Thank you, James.
In Jurassic World Rebirth, these locations were extraordinary, naturally beautiful places.
With a large production like this, you have to really be aware of the environment, and you have to leave things better than when you came there.
Science is for all of us, not some of us.
All of our locations are incredible.
So it was really cool that Universal made sustainability a priority during production.
This production is part of the NBC Universal Greener Light program. So we staffed Jurassic with the largest eco team that we've ever done on a production. It was really important that we invested in green technology from large and small batteries, as well as hiring electric vehicles.
For the first time, we started using reusable lunchboxes, and this stopped single-use containers going to landfill. We've also organized a collaboration with a local NGO which specializes in beach cleanups and ocean cleanups.
It's a big team to keep Thailand clean as much as possible. So we have a guideline, recycle everything that we could, and then at the same time, picking up garbage, just flood from the other side of the ocean.
There's all these ways that you can really have less of an impact on the planet. It's something we all need to do.
Of all species that have existed on Earth, 99.9% of them are now extinct. Survival is a long shot.
No matter what we really think, nature is way bigger and more powerful and important, and we depend on it for our survival, whether we want to admit it or not.
So, Mandy, we saw the talent there as well, didn't we? So was that endemic across the whole of the film? People bought into it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they were all aware of what we were doing. I mean, I was super proud to say that Scarlett Johansson, I saw her in, she would come to the dining tent every day.
She's your best friend?
Well, I wish she was, but no, I do have a girl crush on her. She's amazing. But, she would actually, I saw her one day standing at the back and she was explaining to whoever she was with, as someone from makeup, to make sure that they were putting their reusable bowls into the right bin, and I'd created a poem to help people understand, to put these ones in this bin and this in this bin. And she was like reading it and sort of commenting on it. So that kind of engagement, I think is fantastic to be able to have that opportunity to do that. And interestingly, just something as, what you might see as small as having reusable bowls and cups on a production for the catering actually had a massive impact on the crew, who just saw it as the production really caring about both the planet and people's well-being, because it was nicer to eat out of the bowls than it was to eat out of compostable boxes. So it had a really, a big ripple effect on.
Can I ask?
Yes.
What did they do with the bowls at the end of the day? Did they take them home and put them back in again?
No, yeah. So this was actually a company called Reuser, and they provided all of the bowls and lids and stuff, and so then they would empty the bins once a week, come back with, they take them away, wash them up, and then bring us clean new ones. So it was quite an operation, but it was worth trying. We're hoping to work with Sky Studios Elstree to do something similar for our next big adventure that's coming soon.
In a moment, I'm going to go to the audience to see if you've got any questions. But I suppose what it all boils down to is that kind of soft power in many ways, those conversations. You do need policy, you do need data, that head of production, but that soft power, that people spreading the word and talking about what they've seen creates quite a storm, doesn't it? So what can we do about that without making it too policy driven? But it ultimately has to be to make changes as well. But how important is that soft power of people talking about it?
I think it's super important. I mean, I always say that some of my best work is done in the production office kitchen. And I'm not even joking. I mean, I have followed, producers, anybody I see into the kitchen to make another coffee, introduce myself, have a conversation, and that then often leads to actions. So it goes back to what I said right at the beginning, which is that culture change leading to the actions, which leads to the data, which then informs the policy decisions in the first place.
So do you have any questions for our panel? Or are you just having a nice sit back and enjoying the afternoon? You know that the drinks are going to be served in an hour's time. There's a gentleman here who I've fallen in love with straight away because he's got his hand up. So if you can keep your hand up, the microphone is winging its way to you. And thank you.
Hello. I was just wondering, like, in terms of productions on all scales, from like as big as Jurassic Park and then some of the smaller TV stuff that we do here, I noticed, I work on set quite a lot, and I noticed that particularly since COVID, there was less cutlery and plates being used with catering companies. And how would you go about potentially raising the standards again so that, like, there was plates and cutlery that got washed rather than reusing disposable things? Also, things like water. Most of us do bring our own water bottles on set, but you can't just not provide water. So a lot of people are drinking from disposable cups and bottles. Is there anything that we can use to enforce something better?
Yeah, very practical question there. Thank you for that.
I can probably take that.
Yeah, go for it, Mandy.
So yeah, absolutely. When we first meet with the catering company, it's one of the key things that we ask is, can we swap out the compostable, single-use boxes, regardless of whether they're compostable. I don't want to point you around saying compostable, but regardless of whether they're compostable or not, with real dishware and cutlery as well. And the answer is often it depends. So if you are in a remote location, it's not going to be practical to get plates and cutlery washed up. You'd have to hire a dishwashing unit, it just, then you might need an extra person who's responsible for collecting all of that stuff and washing it up. But if you are, say, at a studio, then absolutely, why shouldn't you be able to do that? And it also then depends on the size of the production. So yeah, smaller productions may be more practical. Also encouraging people to bring their own, boxes. A lot of people have these kind of, tiffin type tins, at home. Could you bring those in? With the water bottles, I mean, in the same way that Sky is, one of our recommendations, and again, depends on which company we're working with, but no single-use plastic, particularly, specifying water bottles. So making sure that the production have ample water coolers for people to refill their bottles, signage up everywhere to thank people, never please, can you? Always reframe it with thank you for bringing your reusable bottle in, has a massive impact when you change the actual language that you use to communicate these kind of things. And also just making sure that people are aware of the requirement. I mean, you know, I endlessly spot single-use plastic water bottles, usually in the first couple of days on a production new crew. Maybe they haven't read the green memo, they haven't, you know, seen the signage up. But, you know, encouraging them by actually saying, do you know what, put it on the call sheets, you know, thank you for doing this, thank you for supporting our ambitions. And it's that inclusive behaviour, I think, that goes a long way.
Yeah. Anybody else to add to that? Has that answered your question? Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh, can I give you a microphone? Can I get a microphone for you so we can hear you? Okay. It's coming. It's right behind you.
It was sort of going back to the same point, really. I think that the problem with the dishwashing came from the continuous working day that happened during COVID. So on location drama, we used to break for lunch, drive to the unit base. The caterers, historically, always washed the dishes. But with COVID, that changed, even though it didn't need to change. And it never moved back because there were savings in the catering department and everybody had moved to vegware. So that's been part of the problem. And it's been a sort of mind shift, and it's hard to go back once you've changed it. So it does seem ludicrous that we're hiring, I guess they're kind of like the silicone pots that we're using now, as opposed to plates that can be cleaned. So
it's that speed of production, isn't it? I think people also they want to
take the continuous working day and leave early, rather than driving and then having the pots washed.
Yeah.
So, but you would rather go back to how it was before? Was it a better way, do you think?
I understand that it's a better life-work balance. Yeah. If you can have the continuous working day, people can leave earlier, they can see their kids. But then it does seem really wrong that we're spending tens of thousands on vegware that then just goes in the bin.
Yeah.
So that comes back to that procurement contract, doesn't it, at the time?
I guess so, and the caterers.
Yeah.
If I give you a really interesting stat, though, so with these like reusable bowls that we used on Jurassic, we displaced estimated 34,000 single-use items.
Yes.
34,000. That tells you the impact of doing something like that.
Yeah, we did the same on one of our Sky shows under Salt Marsh. We used the silicone option, but we didn't have a company to take care of it, so it was a case of who washed the silicone at the end of the day.
What happened? Did crew take their own? Did they take them home and then bring them?
Arranged somebody to clean it, but I think it was a bit of a faff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like taking turns on the rota to wash up.
To solve.
Yeah.
We did lots of other good stuff on that show as well.
Well, I'm sure there's two people who've mentioned it. I don't know if you know each other, probably do, but no.
I'm always moaning about this because I'm so old that I remember when you just used a plate and wash. So, and I kind of think if you're a caterer, you wouldn't turn up to a wedding and then get everyone to wash their own dishes. So,
no, it's
but
interesting.
I see that there's a problem to be solved.
Yeah, no, very interesting. But thank you very much. Thank you both for that.
But I think it is the continuous working day as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like it, doesn't it? Any other questions that we've got? Anything that we may not have covered you wanted an answer to? As we sort of head... Oh, there's a... Jono, very shy. No, wait for the microphone, just in case. I know you've got a booming voice, but just in case you don't.
In Ireland, the government set up a sustainability account, as you might say. So if you're a hire company or a sustainable type company and you wanted to get power, you could apply for a grant of 22,000 euros or something like that. Lesley, I think that's what it was. So what you did is you purchased your battery, produced the invoice, and you get the grant from the government. Is there anything like that happening here? Do we know of anything ever going to happen like that here? Should that happen here on
I feel like if there was, Jono, you'd know about it.
John, what's the answer to your
campaign
question?
starts now.
And then the other thing for us, if I may talk about NXTGENbps, is that the one thing we are very conscious of is that when we bring a product to market, we actually look at the future of the product. We look at what's going to happen to it when it's not working so well. How do we recycle it? All of our units are solar chargeable. All of our units are daisy chainable. And this is what we feel is the difference between us and the other type battery makers. We try to keep everything fresh, new ideas happening. and preempt the questions that will come from the likes of Mandy and production companies, etc. But just going back to the one thing that I think we should, I don't know how we can do this, Albert, BAFTA, whatever the heck, KSDAM or whatever, but there should be some sort of grant situation thought about, mumbled about, talked about, because it just makes common sense.
Yeah.
For the future of units, of battery power and all the rest, it's keeping the technology fresh, keeping us all aware of the value of what we're doing and how we can do it and what it gives you. And it is a difficult, you know, when you started out using batteries and they were just power. Now we've got to worry about, you know, logistics and then get the information back to base. That, you know, we're working on that too, and I'm sure you are. And then it's getting it within health and safety, lifting it up for people, and it's become, in its way, battery power has become sort of like the diesel. There is that connection between weight and availability, but we actually have the advantage that costing of battery will be, or the savings of batteries, etc., will be the huge advantage for all the manufacturers. And it's just getting them just to get in there and have a taste. And the same with the hire companies. Get the hire companies to have a taste.
Well, it sounds like a messaging point as well, but just in terms, Dee, from, you know, the government's willingness, I mean, they've got their plate full on quite a few things. So, you know, from your point of view of talking to other clients and other industries, is this something that, you know, people are banging the drum for?
I think the thing that kind of resonates with me most of what you're saying is around circularity, and I think that's where there'll be some, I don't know, I'm not part of the government, but I do feel like there is such an important part of environmental impact that we don't always talk about, particularly in our industry with tech. And I'm doing quite a lot of work on circularity with one of my clients at the moment. They spend millions of pounds with CapEx, with just broadcast equipment every year. And, you know, that's not unusual, I'm sure, for big broadcast servicing companies. And, you know, do we know what will happen to all those products at end of life? It's end of life for them, it's not end of life for someone else necessarily. So, you know, and then when it does become properly end of life, how can it be? You know, you've got the producer take-back schemes. There's more emphasis on the manufacturers and the producers of these products to take them back, to then refurbish and recycle them in-house. So that's already a scheme that exists. So that's something. But in terms of like incentives for going into using more green tech, I don't know of any. I would love there to become some. And it does feel like that needs to be more incentives to do it, because otherwise, you know, someone's got to take the hit financially to take the risk to start to kind of shift the whole, you know, the whole framework to try and get more people using it. And you guys are doing that at BPS, so congrats to you. And you know, but I do think on the positive side, there will be more focus on manufacturers to be answerable in terms of the carbon footprint, the product carbon footprint. There's a lot of talk about that for particular pieces of kit. You know, and making things more repairable and more reusable, and donation schemes and all of those kind of things, because the impacts. It's very hard to assess the carbon footprint of a product if there's no LCA on it. You just have to go on a weight and a kind of arbitrary emission factor for a piece of broadcast equipment or something, you know, isn't it? It's really hard. So I think the whole circularity piece, there's a lot in that. And yeah, I'm happy to join your campaign, Jono, if you start.
It starts today, the revolution. Here we go. Let's sign up. And actually, I'm going to ask each panellist to wrap up in just a second, a final thought of what they'd like you to think about when you go back to wherever you've come from within Sky or outside of Sky. But actually just think about, what are you going to do differently tomorrow, just as a commitment after everything you've heard today? Is there anything else that you could potentially change? What commitment you could make? What are you going to go back to your colleagues and talk about? Remember that soft power of spreading the word? So often I'm liking it when people say, well, how was that event, Sky Expo? They go, oh yeah, I really enjoyed the sandwiches and the tea and coffee. Don't tell them that. Tell them about something you heard, saying, well, there was a really good initiative about X, Y, and Z, or actually, clearly the industry needs to do more, or, you know, grants would be a good thing, or that circularity point of view, or that soft power, you know, spreading the word and talking about things, or changing the messaging, as you said, to being more grateful and thankful as opposed to a command. So just think about, what are you going to do differently? I'm going to think about that for myself too. So while you're doing that, just want to go down the end, Crispin, just some final thoughts you want to leave the audience. It's your last chance to get your message across of what you think is really important.
I think, so just to echo everything that we've said, it's you know, it's the power of the consumer, I guess. If you're ordering anything off any business, whether or not it's this industry or another, you know, if you ask people, you know, what's your environmental sustainability, you know, what's your environmental policy? Do you have an environmental policy? Where are you getting this from? Have you thought about this? You know, as a business owner, you know, that's the sort of feedback which is like, oh my God, if people start asking for it, you have to start doing it, whether or not you like it or not. I mean, it's always been something we've done, so it's not a problem for us. But the more people that ask questions around sustainability, the more businesses are going to need to respond to it.
Yeah, nice one. Same for you, Mandy.
So I'm going to go with a couple of things here. First of all, I think the thought of that professionalising sustainability support is really, really important. You know, and the way I line this is you wouldn't just give somebody in the production a health and safety basic awareness course and then expect them to write professional risk assessments. It's the same for the planet. It requires, you know, professional people to actually do this and make it work. And the second is the thought that I mentioned earlier, which is the power of community. And, you know, she's gone now, Marianne Matthews, but there's a phrase that we used to talk about, which is, it's an African proverb, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go together.
Yeah, nice one. Go further, go together. Yeah, that's a lovely mantra, isn't it? Dee, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I would say, you know, we all need to be responsible for turning our collective ambition, which hopefully we've all got this ambition to turn this industry into a greener place, into action. And to do that, we all need to be more than just open-minded. We need to be, you know, we need to take action with intent. We need to ask the questions. You know, whatever our roles are, you know, we have influence within our own spheres to be able to say, what about this? Why don't we have a look at this? Why don't we explore it? Is there a trial we can do? Are we asking our suppliers of the right things? You know, and to the culture point, it's just kind of just be thinking about it the whole time. So it's being more than open-minded. And you know, how cool is it if I become the person that suggested to my boss that we do something in a new way, and then that becomes the thing that happens across Sky, and that really makes a meaningful shift to make us greener. You know, like, it's a really great opportunity that we've got, and you want to be on that green bandwagon because it's not going anywhere, I tell you. So, yeah.
Join it, okay. Yeah. And Lesley, final words from you.
Difficult one when everyone's said all the good things they've said. I think it is collaboration and power of collaboration, which I think we've talked a lot about today. And I think working together will make things happen faster. You know, we've all got objectives in our jobs, and I think being more sustainable, being green has to be one of those key objectives for everybody in their job and in their life. And slowly those things, you know, it will make the change happen. I mean, obviously, we'd like to sell more batteries, but we'd like people to take a risk and try things. And we're very happy to help people on that journey, because that's the way, you know, you build confidence and you make the changes that need to be changed. And I think that's what people have got to do. They've just got to take the chance and be that person that Dee said as you know, really made that difference, actually, and you know, you'll probably become the hero for it.
So be bolder in many ways. And I promised you a slide, didn't I? So I don't know if we can get this up with all the educational resources here. So I don't know if you want to take a picture of that. Yes, people are getting their phones out, so definitely was worth the effort of putting that slide together. And Lesley, just take us through, just very briefly, what we've got here. We've got practical guides, tools and support, and some training and certification
so I think,
stuff.
yeah, importantly, we talked a lot about sustainable professionals, and clearly Picture Zero, Mandy's a key part of Picture Zero. You know, she's had so much valuable things to say today, so great place to go, and more of those departments within larger companies that have their own, you know, Sky has its own area to go to too, but it can be a bit overwhelming. So we, you know, that's why looking online, if you just Google something like sustainability for TV, it's actually quite difficult to pick through the weeds. So hopefully we've helped with some short lists there. Training is key, and BAFTA Elba is the brilliant place to go for that. I think just Googling some of those titles up there, the film London Green Screen, the Climate Hub, that's a brilliant place. As NXTGENbps, we wanted to become a greener business as well as selling green products, and actually just signing up to that was quite a simple process for a small company, so you don't have to be a big organisation to do it. So that's a really good resource for, just even if you're a freelancer or a small company with only 2 or 3 people, you can still work towards those climate goals. So lots of brilliant resources on there. I won't read them all out. But.
So we'll leave it up there for a while, just in case you're still looking for your phone and haven't taken a photo. But thank you very much for those that did. Hopefully you'll find that very useful. But I just want to say a big thank you to my panellists, to Lesley, to Dee, to Mandy and Crispin. Big round of applause, please. Thank you.